And we're back. It's JP from Web3 TEA. Very happy to be here. Very excited about today's show. We've got Jacob from 0xTHULU, a really cool NFT project. It's a decentralized Web3 production house and art collective project that launched back in August of 2022. And as usual, I'm joined by my trusted and faithful compatriot, Matt Bartlett, who is the king of NFTs here at Van Eck. I think that's his official title. And you might notice that I'm dressed up today. I've got my suit on. Actually, it's a coat jacket. We're going to NASDAQ later on today to ring the closing bell. And it's Halloween week, so I've got my cool little orange pumpkin button. So very excited to be here. We're going to have a great time. And Matt, Jacob, how's it going today?
Fantastic. Happy to be here. Happy to see you guys. And, yeah, how are you?
Yeah, great. Just looking forward to learning more about 0xTHULU and glad that you can come on and join us. So really appreciate your time.
Yeah, so this is a project like 99% of the other projects that I learn about and find about that Matt Bartlett sent me. So Matt, why don't you intro how you found about 0xTHULU, and then we'll kick it over to Jacob and have him just give us the rundown on what's going on.
Sure. So I'm in a lot of the same discords and communities that Jacob's in, namely Fluff World would be an example. And it's my understanding that this is more of a community-centric project, and I'll have to learn more today about how you all came together to start 0xTHULU, but that is how I came to know about it.
So Jacob, what is 0xTHULU? What are you guys focused on? What's the community about?
Yeah, so 0xTHULU is a Web3 production house and art collective. And essentially what that translates into is we are a film production company and a content creation company that besides just working in film and visual cinematic content, we also work in the NFT medium with that content. So we have a collective of devs, we have a collective of artists, and we build alongside the community to create more and more foundation for people to flourish with content as artists.
So is there a group of professionals, like media professionals, like film editors or, content creators that's working separately than the actual community itself? Or is the community itself is what composes the media specialists?
It's a little bit of a both as far as where we source our talent from. We have over 100 years of combined experience working in Hollywood as DGA, PGA producers, directors. Our CTO was actually the head of acquisitions for the physical department at Netflix and was a gatekeeper for that. So we have a massive Rolodex, obviously, of people, and we hire people that we know that are tested and proven to work on certain aspects. But we also pull in from the community, and a substantial amount of our hires, including the artists who created the art for our most recent NFT, are from the community. So we'll bring them in, we'll hire them and contract them just as we would with any other job.
First of all, I own a couple of the NFTs, and I know Matt does. And so I augmented. I think I have three or four. I augmented one, and it's like there's different factions, right? So like there's different groups. What do those different groups mean, and why would I want to be in one group or not the other? Why would I care about what group I'm in? And maybe just go over what the groups are.
Yeah, sure. So in our collection, in the V2 contract, the augmented relic of membership, we have 5 main sigils, which represent the 5 main tiers of the membership cards. So we have high prophets, which are the most rare. We have shards of the oracle. We have abyss and kinship, and then we have lost souls. So our lore and our storytelling is an optional aspect. Some people just want to collect. They just want to buy and trade and flip an NFT, and they're not so concerned with it. But we incentivize that storytelling and getting to know that and building upon it. By the alpha that you would want to seek in our project can be determined through the lore and through the storytelling. So high prophets, as an example, to become a high prophet, when we first started, we started through the Fluff World community where I had a fluff. It was maybe my least rare fluff. And I wanted to build off of that IP, and I wanted to flex that if you put enough story behind one of these NFTs with commercial usage rights, you can amplify the value beyond the floor price and the floor traits. So I started by putting out 3 encrypted messages from Screamin' Jay Fluffkins, my fluff. And the people who decoded those, the first people, became our initial high prophets. And we had a lot of back and forth when we first started. It was a good pushback of like, no, people are really interested in this. People want to see this develop. So we established what it means to be a high prophet, and it's essentially like a secret cult between all of us that art imitates life, life imitates art. We created these encrypted prophecies, and they started to come true through the action of our proactivity and also just by strange fate. So Shards of the Oracle, that gets a little bit deeper into it. We've just revealed that in our story with the NFT drop. So the Oracle is something that is established as broken and has to be reassembled and has to do with time travel. So there is also a list of traits in our collection for different scroll eras, and they highlight the different points in our time tree. So our universe, our multiverse, if you will, doesn't just exist in the present. It's not just a continuous linear story. There are all sorts of different timelines, and with time travel, you can actually go back and affect the outcome of different plot lines. So building. It's a slow build and it's pieces, but it's more meant to be foundational. So people have something to build off of, as I did with a commercially licensed NFT.
Yeah, so I think something that we've probably struggled with our community NFT is the lore, right? We had these videos up front. It set the story, set the tone, and then we moved on to other things. And I find it interesting that it sort of started with lore, and that continues, right? And so I guess, could you talk to maybe the importance of lore in general, and then who's making the lore now, right? Who is crafting that lore as we speak?
Sure, sure. So I'd say for the importance of lore first, lore is storytelling essentially, and all art, all mediums are storytelling at their core. So a painting, architecture, music, and literature, it all tells a story to one degree or another. But NFTs as a medium give us a really interesting opportunity to do more collaborative pieces, and it expands the characters, the avatars, if you will, well beyond just an initial basis. For us, starting with lore, we had a great foundation in the Cthulhu mythos, and I think that was a really important piece of this. The Cthulhu mythos and H.P. Lovecraft's story are sort of one of the earliest decentralized pieces of literature, because Lovecraft laid out the books, he laid out the basis for these things, but I would say the majority of any lore or storytelling around these Cthulhu characters and their pantheon is actually other writers and other artists and other filmmakers and concept artists who are building on top of that and adding to that. So we had that foundation. And I'll say too that H.P. Lovecraft was a terrible person. He was a bigot. He was racist. He was awful. And in this, art has not traditionally been inclusive. It has not traditionally been equitable or accessible. So we very much we have the phrase "resistance is fertile," and we like to spray paint over those kinds of things and replace it with something that is more inclusive and is more accessible and equitable for people. So as far as who's crafting the lore, it started with a foundation that I had written out and over the course of over a year now, just putting in pieces, and it was built in real time in the beginning through storytelling through the Scream and Jay Fluffkins account. Then it started to go into Discord, and then we started to establish a real solid foundation of what was happening. So I've been contributing, and then we opened it up to having other people sort of conjoin and tell their stories with it. So it's interesting how things unfolded as community participation, because we have our core IP, and there's a lot of reason why we need to protect and be careful about how that's used and how it's how people are allowed to participate with that lore. But there are people who have jumped in and they've seen it as a foundation, and they've created their own collections, they've created their own art pieces, and they've created their own stories. It's giving visibility to other artists. It's allowing people to take what's just the essential foundation. They have license to go ahead and say that they would reach out and say, hey, I would like Scream and Jay Fluffkins to appear here. We coordinate that, and then they can build and branch off of it.
Matt, you're a lore guy. You love the lore. I remember one of the first when I first got into NFTs, like a year and a half, 2 years ago. You were in the Discord and you're like, "Hey, there's a writing contest for this or that." You were like just knocking out these big writing things and then like winning.
I won an Altered State Machine Ultra Box which at the time was up there in value, and something else for writing a poem. But I mean, those are my strengths, maybe with good editing. But there's a lot. There are other folks who are producing films and other things and pictures that I can't even compete with.
So the one question I kind of want to get at right here is, so you're a part of the community, you own an NFT, like who do you envision using it, and then give me a specific on how this NFT would be used by somebody. So I looked at the press release you guys got. Keith David did the voice. That's really cool. I've seen him in a lot of movies. That's really neat. But there's membership via token ownership, funding, access to studio resources. Like, walk me through, if you can, what that means, like to somebody who might not be familiar with getting into all these creative writing and stuff, like within a Discord community. Like, what does that mean on an application basis, or like from a production standpoint?
Sure. So from a production standpoint, and as far as the utility of the Relic of Membership, our Genesis NFT, it's a membership pass and it's a mint pass. So it's our Genesis. It gives people access to the future drops that we have, and it gives people access to the resources that we have and are building. So there are many different ways that works. Obviously, as a mint pass, when we do drops, we have different gamified elements within the metadata that allow different people to be able to go in gamified ways to claim different drops that we have. So it gives us a lot of range to do things that are limited edition, gives people reason and incentive to collaborate with the community to get access to these drops to complete certain things, and then more than that. So we'll obviously have artists doing drops and doing releases that people will be able to claim. We are an art collective, and we work with and interviewed several artists just to get a good taste and give a lot of culture to the community. So we have these networking experiences, we have these learning experiences, but ultimately as a resource and how that works, 0xTHULU has now become multiple businesses. So now we also have the nonprofit Project Thulu, and that is our community treasury. So with the Relic of Membership, holders get access to be able to propose and request grant-style funding from that nonprofit so that they can create. So that's giving people access and like an equitable means of being able to pursue funding. We're essentially, it's a gate opening utility that we're looking to build. So the first gate of gatekeeping is usually getting the funding. So Project Thulu and the Community Treasury help to make that happen. We devote 33% of our revenue off of the Relic into the Project Thulu. So
33% is going to the nonprofit. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot, and it's a radical commitment that we wanted to see through and wanted to make sure we're building a good foundation. And of course, too, as we branch off into that with the nonprofit doing Web3 and creative onboarding, helping to teach financial literacy to artists who might not necessarily have it and give some of those skills, that becomes a great utility and a great foundation for people to work from. Getting into the production, that's sort of the second layer of things. We have access to over 300 devs in our collective. We also have access to very targeted creative professionals in just about anything that we would want to create from our experience in film and filmmaking. Filmmaking is a very diverse field where it's not just cameras and actors. There are artists creating the backgrounds, there are 3D artists, there's 2D animation, there's many layers of sound and music and audio that can be implemented in this. So we come with a massive resource of these people. So let's say you were to get funding to create a project, the next step is getting the team that you need to be able to build it. And not everyone is equipped or has access to these kinds of professionals. Say Keith David, for example. Not everyone can just reach out or knows the path and the channel to be able to reach out with him. But we have pre-existing relationships with agents, with agencies, with talent, and we can help connect people to just about anyone if we really try. Also, if you wanted to make a 3D animated piece, let's say you raised $100,000 in a grant from Project Thulu, you would want to make sure that you're getting a good team, a proven team, and we can help people find who that is. And then same on the dev side, whatever they want to build. Some people might want to build a full-on PFP project, and that's great. And we have the means to do that. And it's hard to seek out professional devs. It's very hard. And so the final stage in what we're building, we already have been unveiling our custom built 4K streaming optimized IPFS array. If you see our NFT, it is a large file. It is 4K and it streams like butter. And that is one of our crowning achievements. It's a never before achieved system that we are one of the few entities in this entire space that can upload an entire film in 4K to an NFT and have it stream with no lag or slowdown. So we're going to be building a marketplace, and we're going to be building a live streaming platform that helps to democratize distribution, because those layers of gates, you can get the funding, sure. You can make the project, sure. But then how do you get it out and distribute it to the public? So this is where we get all sorts of incentivizations, working with community. You need to engage with community. Ultimately, the governance and the green lighting of funding in these projects is determined by community. So it helps to build this whole basis of a collective to really amplify anything that anyone wants to create through that system.
So if I have an idea for a 12 series TV show using a character avatar NFT, I can make a proposal, assume it gets passed, and 0xTHULU will help me sort the developers, the talent needed to get it done, and then possibly help me with distributing it, streaming it, and we all sort of share in the royalties and the IP. Am I hot, cold? Talk to me a little bit more about that.
So I think you're mostly on the right track, but I think that in the end, we want to empower people to be able to create this content and for them to be able to make their way from it. So I don't think that, if we give grant style funding to a team, if you wanted to produce your series, you should be able to take the reaping and the rewards of that, because you've gone through, it was your idea, it's your IP, and we're offering the grants so that you can create with no obligation and no frills. So we would help you, we could help you, and it's optional. You don't have to go through our devs, you don't have to go through our animation and our collective of artists if you don't choose to. And you don't have to distribute necessarily on our platform in the end, but we just want to see art being created. So yeah, the short answer is yes. But at the back end of that, we would want the people who are taking part in this and creating to take the bulk of the benefits from that.
Yeah. So just, next 3-6 months, what are you looking forward to?
So yeah, the next 3 to 6 months, I'm really looking forward to delivering on that utility and utilizing it as a membership pass. Ultimately, people put their faith and their trust in us, and we're this established collective. And now that we've been through some of the early learning curves of this space, we're ready to start delivering more things. So there will be a number of different drops, gamified drops. We're also developing the Thulu token, which is going to be a cryptocurrency that helps to reinforce resources for creatives through cryptocurrency. We have our marketplace and our platform, which might be more than 6 months, but we also have a bunch of different pieces. Wow. The nonprofit will launch within that time. We're developing an avatar series. We're working on establishing a little bit more interactivity with the VR 360 spaces that we're creating, and a little bit more. We have a secret roadmap of things, and not because we're trying to conceal it, but more because we would rather be delivering and less hype. And have people engage more in the present and stop FOMOing, stop speculating over this and that, and just get that utility delivered and established. So we like to surprise people, and that's a whole lot of what's coming.
So we pre-cleared this question earlier, but I wanted to talk to you about the mint, the first mint. Based on what I understand, first of all, when you mint an NFT project, you've been built. You don't do it to a vacuum, right? Like, you've been trying to build a community. You're trying to gather following. You're trying to tell people we're minting. This is why you want it. This is what we're going to be. This is what we're about, right? So it's a big deal, and you want to be popping champagne bottles and backslapping and having a great time. And from what I understand, the first mint did not have that, right? Like there was a bot attack and there were a couple of thousand minted by, I would say, a nefarious bot, right? Like that you didn't want a bot to be minting, 5,000 of your NFTs. So we talk a lot about mindset, Matt and I, because what you're doing and kind of what we're doing too is pushing the envelope and stepping into the unknown, right? And when you're doing that, you don't know where you're going, and it's hard. And there's people over here saying that you're stupid, and there's other people over here saying, or whatever, right? Like you're not stepping. It's not a rosy, easy walk in the park, And so I would just love to hear maybe a little bit about what happened, and then a little bit about maybe your mindset or your team is how do you get through this, I would call pretty significant setback. And then what is that, 2 months later, you're still chugging, you're still pushing through, and you're still, keeping that positive energy going. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that you said in there that really caught my ear was, we're facing the fear of the unknown in this. When you're building a startup, when you're building a business, that's ultimately what you're doing. And the Cthulhu mythos and tying that in, like that's our bread and butter. Like we face the fear of the unknown, and that's what the entirety of the story and lore is. So at our core, I think that survival is about having a positive mental attitude and working through these things, that not everything is going to be perfect. We're a community like grassroots build. We're not a whole bunch of executive business leaders backed by VCs building this. We came up out of the community as a grassroots thing to want to get somewhere. So we made some missteps, and I'll own that. But it was a big learning experience for us at that first mint. And I mean, was it tragic? To a degree, but it's also, as a good friend of mine, Nux, from Non-Fungible Labs, had said, every problem is an opportunity. And he was not wrong. There's a silver lining to a lot of this stuff. But to get into some of the detail of what exactly happened to us, it started probably, I would say, a couple of months before we did the mint, where each of us individually on the team started to get hack attempts on our phones, on our computers, and things like that. And there's a lot of details here that I think people should know from a cybersecurity perspective, because when you step in here, if you do get a lot of attention, you can get a lot of the wrong attention too in this space. There are a lot of malevolent actors in this space still because it's highly unregulated, and there's just a lot of workarounds and cheats and shortcuts you can use to manipulate and exploit people. So we had a couple of attempts on our personal computers and everything leading up to this. We had some feeling that, hey, this could get absolutely crazy when we get to the mint because people are stress testing us. So maybe 10 minutes before the mint started, our server was DDoS. So we started to see this massive lag, and we're like, well, what the hell is happening? Really, we're like, well, this is like someone is pinging the hell out of our server, and we have to launch, we have to get it out. When we launched, people were able to subvert the allow list for the people who were allowed free mints during that free mint claim period, and it went like a rocket. It started immediately. It when we say it felt coordinated or seemed coordinated, there's a lot going into that. Less than 5 minutes into our launch, we started to see the mint numbers go off the hook. And when we started to realize where these addresses were coming from, it was actually hard because of the smokescreen of the DDoS attack. So that was doing all sorts of things, creating all sorts of weird things that were happening, including us not even being able to keep track of the counter that was working, counting how many mints had gone out. There was a delay in all of that. So by the time we caught it, we probably caught it and were able to pause the contract about 10 minutes into launching our mint. And in that much time, I think about 5,500 of the NFTs have been minted, and about 5,000 of them were minted by nefarious forces, or spam minters, as you call them. And what they're doing, and we learned a lot from this. There are people who are just pure degen in this space who are using tools that follow aggregation and data analytics, and when they see a mint is ripping, they'll tie into it. But more than that, there are some people, and we felt that it happened so fast. It's really hard for us to break down exactly how it happened. But someone found that they could work around that list very, very quickly, and they started to broadcast it. Some of the founders of these other discords started to broadcast and actually encourage like a pile on of people minting and free minting our projects. So
basically a collective or something like that, you could say. Or
well, this is the weird thing, that it's not necessarily hacking if you're spam minting. It's actually, someone says code is law. It's legal, it's just unethical. That this, what it ended up doing is there were a number of people who free minted who didn't have the clearance to get those free mints, and that takes away from our community, that takes away from our team's families. We have 33% of our revenue dedicated to our charity and other charities, that we lost an opportunity to do that. But what we gained of it is very interesting. First of all, we learned from that experience, absolutely. From there, we shut down the mint, we paused it, we had discussions with our partners and friends of our project to try to figure out, how do we go forward? How do we fix this, and what's the best way? So there's two main options we ran into. One of them is we cancel this mint, we get rid of the whole project. We just say, anyone who's minted this, sorry, we know who the spam minters are, we know who the regular people are, and we're going to reimburse everyone for what they spent, for what they minted. But the problem with that is that some of these people could be both spam minters and people from our community, and they could be gaming the system. Maybe someone paid an exorbitant gas amount so that they can get a higher reimbursement or take more money from us. There's a lot of interesting things that people could have done in that scenario. So really, the harder and the more expensive, the more laborious option was for us to create a V2 contract and have people be able to swap from the V1 to that V2. So in that too, obviously we know who the spam minters are, we know who the legitimate minters are, and some of those spam minters had even reached out to me personally to say that after they had minted and spam minted, knowing nothing about our project, they wanted to come in and they wanted to stay a part of that community, so they asked to be forgiven for what they had done with it. As bad and tragic as that whole situation might have seemed, that day we were the number one traded NFT on all of Ethereum. We have had, at this point, I want to say over 12,000 secondary sales in total. We hit the top level of all of these aggregators, and it created more and more attention to us. It didn't necessarily hurt us. It got a lot of new eyes on us. And while it was unfortunate for a revenue take, it's also not our only stream of revenue. And we just have to get crafty. We have to be positive, and we have to say, like, this happened, it's fine. I think what would hurt us is if we were to walk away. And I think what would really let people down, where we'd really fail, is if we were to walk away from that instead of taking something from it, learning, growing, and getting stronger, and also helping to push the cultural commentary forward of, is this ethical when people do this? Because there are more projects than just ours who have been spam minted, and some of them out entirely. The Gabe Weiss team, for example, the Stoics, that happened to them. It was actually the exact same pattern, and I saw some of the same actors coming into their Discord and everything. It was almost an identical attack to what had happened to us.
Was that after or before yours?
It was after ours. It wasn't long after ours either. But yeah, they were DDoS'd leading up to it, which started to bog down their servers. And then their entire collection got spam minted out in the time that they launched it. So yeah, they decided to scrap that whole contract and relaunch the contract. So yeah, it's hard for people. It happens to the best of them, and I know that it's happened to a lot of larger projects too. It's just how, I guess, forthcoming they can be about it. I'm happy to own our mistakes. We're young, we're learning, we're a startup. This is natural. In agile business, you move fast and break things, and we did that a little, but we're learning from it.
I appreciate your transparency and getting into some of the details of that stuff and reliving that awful day. But I think it's interesting that you guys were top of the charts for that day, and I'm sure that doesn't hurt going forward, because you probably got a lot of new eyeballs versus if it had just been your community and the people who had the pre-sale on the pre-sale list that were able to get that. So Matt, were you going to say something?
Honestly, I want to have you on again like a year from now,
Yeah,
Jacob, and just see where you're at, see what's taking place, see if anyone's taking advantage of the grant and what they've created. I think that would be a really cool show.
100% agree to that. I do. I want to see the first grant. I would love to see. That's going to be really cool. So when we get to the kind of end of the show, we start doing something called lightning round, where we ask silly questions. We just kind of put you on the spot. And I don't really have a good one for today. Do you have a good one, Matt, or we can just ask like a generic one? I mean,
Uh,
this is a horrible setup. That's a
I
horrible
got,
setup.
I have one. Just being selfish. Um, outside of your project, what's a newer NFT project that you like that you're aping into?
Oh wow. Newer. Okay, so I I like to balance my collecting between PFP projects, and independent artists. So lately, I split my time, and I discovered that Ralph Steadman is doing NFTs. So I've been collecting Ralph Steadman pieces. That has been kind of where I'm going, because I have sort of a theory on collecting where art is art. Picasso doesn't lose his value. If Picasso was forced into delivering PFP projects with utility, it might come up and rise and sink with a fad. And there's this dilution of the market that comes with some of that. So yeah, I've been going and I've been collecting some of these other artists that I think are going to be more prominent. Ralph Steadman, Rafik Anadol, a lot of money, who is an artist who is prominent in certain groups and circles, but also passed away earlier this year, I believe.
Ralph Steadman, he's Hunter S. Thompson illustrator, right? That did the books with him and
Exactly.
his cartoon. He's a cartoonist. It's really cool. Are these one of ones that you're doing, or are they collections? Or because there's like a one of one thing. Like I feel like the one of one vibe is on Solana, right? So is he on Ethereum? Or are they one of ones, or what is it?
So they're more limited edition. I think he has some with 100, some with 25, some with less, some with more. I believe he's dropping a couple of them pretty consistently now. But the Ralph Steadman ones are on Tezos. I collect on multiple chains, on Polygon, on different Polygon chains below or above Polygon, Solana, ETH, Flow. I'm into a lot of the different styles, the different blockchains for that reason that you never know who's going to be discovered. I love finding these new artists, and I think with that too, we have in our team we have people who are devoted art collectors. Wes, for example, our marketing strategist, has a Warhol in the back
Wow.
of his room, which has a really incredible story, by the way. I don't know if you're going to have to edit this out, but it's been urinated on, which might have been from Andy Warhol. Go figure, right?
It's a perfect cherry on top of an NFT episode.
Yeah, that's utility, right? No, but in that we've been able, we meet up and we talk once in a while about like, well, what did we discover? And one thing that we kind of discovered recently, and I'm not going to give it away, is that one of the artists who we've had up on our artist talks and our team, when we found the pieces, we were just naturally kind of driven to it because it's a very intricate project, but it might be one of the members of Banksy. So I like going and targeting those things because you never know who's in this space. The anonymity is a really interesting factor in how this art can exist. On Tezos too, Xcopy had been minting under an anonymous account or a very under the radar account on Tezos. You could have picked up an Xcopy piece for 3 or 5 Tezos, which is under $10-15 translation USD, and it sold, I want to say, for 86,000 Tezos, which is a really nice grab if you can find those artists. So yeah, that's where I've been going. So yeah, sorry, that was a long-winded answer to your question.
No, that was really good. Matt, I feel like I know you. I don't have any questions for you. I don't have any. You have anything for me? I mean, like,
No, I thought you looked great today. So
oh, I appreciate it. You
excellent.
look great today too. You look great today too. Jacob from 0xTHULU. Surprising, illuminating, interesting, heartfelt. I really appreciate your consideration. We really both appreciate you coming onto the show. And we're going to call it a day. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great day.